Yes, I'm not sure about the title, how that, it's not entirely focused on Denmark's strait, but it's certainly focused on cruise ship tourism traffic and its influence on communities and impact in a larger perspective. I would start thanking for having this opportunity of presenting this subject to the group. And the connection between Nansen and this particular subject is, in my mind, pretty clear. Nansen went along the south and east coast of Greenland, and this binds into my initial research project on cruise tourism that was a comparative study of Iceland and Greenland's position in relation to the development of cruise ship tourism in the Arctic. And a lot of things are actually into the deep, which I will turn back to. So tourism is quite some phenomenon in playing a key role in transforming societies, and it encompasses human encounters. It brings technology into areas. It brings money and finance into areas, visual and symbolic influence, and brings along interregional interaction of ideas. So from a societal transformative perspective, tourism is quite influential. So what has Nansen's Greenland expedition in common with cruise passengers after millennium? Well, firstly, both Nansen and later time cruise passengers built on the same conduct, shipborne tourism. But it's an entirely different, with entirely different aims, and of course a very different level of impact. So where Nansen was an explorer, we're experiencing to a greater extent cruise tourism being representative of mass tourism to the north, which is an entirely new phenomenon and brings along some issues and challenges that I'm going to present shortly in a while. So you could say that the golden era of cruise tourism started in a period after 1920s and lasted until World War II. But in the last 10 years or decade, we've seen a period with a significant increase in cruise tourism to the north. And I brought this along. This is a cover from a passengers list from one of the cruise lines traveling or sailing transatlantic in 1936, Cunard Cruise Line. And it's a for a geographer, this is a very funny map, because as you can see, Greenland and Iceland are not visible on the map. But today, Greenland has become a hotspot of international interest, also in tourism. But then again, I think a picture like that reflects a knowledge gap, and in my mind, there's still a huge knowledge gap on the impact of this form of traffic in the Arctic. And just to bring you back shortly to Norway, Norway has really a stronghold in the heritage of cruise tourism. not only because of the legacy of the Hurtigruten, the coastal route, but it is the country that is leading as a recipient of cruise passengers. And the high north is to an increasing extent the destination for an ever larger group of interested and affluent passengers. And if we just take this the geographical area as a whole around the North Atlantic and Arctic, the highest growth rate of cruise calls has been observed for the last decade in this area. So we perhaps experience again the golden era of ship-on tourism. The North has an increasing appeal, not based on actual impacts of climate change, but also based on the belief that things are changing, ice is disappearing, and so on. Around 2.4 million passengers traveled as cruise passengers in 2008, and with increase in the season and days where the Northern Sea route will be open, the number of affluent travelers able to pay for a tour to the exotic Arctic, the number will increase. And as more ships are entering Arctic marine areas, more of them are not purposely built for icy conditions. And we can observe that the larger ships are daring to go a little bit up further north than last year, up along the east coast of Greenland. And this, of course, should make us attentive to the potential risks. In the cruise business, there's a polarization, and this is specifically relevant to the north areas, because we can see ever larger cruise ships coming into these zones, but we also have an increasing number of what we term as niche cruises. These are expedition cruises, icebreakers, refurbished, and operating according to the Lindblad model, that is an educational tourism model. Sparsely populated destinations compared to capacity of cruise vessels can, in the case of a larger number of ever larger cruise ships visiting, they can be quickly overwhelmed by mass tourism, and this we can term as a forced exposure of remote communities. Actual impacts of climate change on tourist destinations are potentially much further reaching, as they affect the resource base of tourism both directly and indirectly. And understanding these changes is a first step towards managing them and adapting to new circumstances. Just going to jump over this slide, but it shows changes in cruise ship arrivals in selected Norwegian ports in the north. And if we compare that to Iceland, Greenland, Alaska, we have steeper graphs. So this is a symptom for the north. And ever larger cruise ships have been constructed in recent years, and I just picked that particular photo because it's an example of one of the largest of the new cruises that arrived to Akureyri in recent years, Grand Princess, with 3,800 passengers, and from this perspective it looks like a compact town visiting another town. So the scale and scope of this is immense. What's also interesting is that cruises up north are depicted in advertisement as personal victory for those involved, but it seems effortless, which is a big change from Nansen's expeditions, though it presents, of course, some potential risks. I'm going to present in another project in a minute some of those potential threats in a longer term perspective, But I just want to, well, underline what was also presented yesterday, that Arctic Council's first binding legal agreement on Arctic search and rescue that was signed in Nuuk last year was an important stepping stone in direction of not only realizing the risk, but more importantly, securing action for potential threats. I'm very shortly going to present two projects that I've been involved with on cruise tourism and in an international perspective. The first one was a project that was funded by NSF, Arctic Observation Network Social Indicators. And in this particular project, we attempted to develop a database that would serve to track social changes brought about by the expansion of Arctic tourism resulting from climate change. And me and my colleague in Alaska from Institute of Social and Economic Research, Ginny Fay, we selected 12 potential indicators for long-term assessment and monitoring changes in Arctic tourism. And so we attempted to collect consistent data from 1980 to 2008 for Alaska, Canada, Norway, Greenland, Lapland, and Iceland. We
has left the conference.
Is the conference... Oh, some problems here with the sound system? Yes, I'm gonna proceed from just underlining that I think in the respect of in terms of potential threats of in relation to cruise tourism traffic in the north, I think Arctic Council's first binding legal agreement that was mentioned yesterday and signed in Nuuk in May 2011 was a very important stepping stone in direction of not only realizing the risk, but more importantly securing action for potential threats. And now I turn to a project that I was involved in 2007 to 2008. This was a project supported by the International Polar Year 2007-2008 in a collaborative project that was a part of a component of a larger project known as the Arctic Observation Network Social Indicators Project, which again was a part of a science initiative known as the Study of Environmental Arctic Change. This NSF-funded project I worked on with my colleague in Alaska at the Institute of Social and Economic Research at the University of Alaska Anchorage, where we attempted to develop a database that would serve to track social changes brought about by the expansion of Arctic tourism resulting from climate change. We selected 12 potential indicators for long-term assessment and monitoring changes in Arctic tourism, where we attempted to collect consistent data from 1980 to 2008 for Alaska, Canada, Norway, Greenland, Lapland, and Iceland. But as data collection by national agencies varies quite significantly sometimes across the Arctic countries, and data are not available for all selected indicators, we ran into a significant problem in that most jurisdictions use sampling and reporting protocols that result in statistically unreliable estimates for remote rural areas. Thank you. So I'm not sure where we ended with the presentation from this International Polar Year project that I was involved in, but in very short, we conducted data as possible from 1980 to 2008 for Alaska, Canada, Norway, Greenland, Lapland, and Iceland. And but I'm not going to dwell on that. But with this achieved knowledge pool, if you can say so, we observed common development in general. In the tourism growth was a common feature for the different region to a different extent, though. And but annual changes in tourist receipts, as we see on the graph from 1993 to 2006, also show that this is an activity that has an inbuilt volatility related to economic conjunctures. And but now I'm going to jump to another project that I was involved in. Just really shortly tell you that just keep in mind that another common trait between Nansen and cruise tourism, besides attempting to visit ever more pristine areas, for some driven by wanderlust, and then sailing into more remote areas is part of a sort of a penetrating frontier nature of tourism. It's a accompanied symptom, you could say. I'm shortly now going to jump into a project that I was involved with 15 other researchers from the Arctic North. This was initiated by Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where we got an assignment to identify megatrends in the Arctic for the next 25 years. And so my role in that was identifying the impacts of increased access by sea and specifically impacts of shipborne tourism on more remote communities in the north. And just to make things a little bit brief here, you could say that most national, regional, and local authorities in the north welcome tourism as an important element in growing and strengthening economies. And we even see areas that are huge recipients of cruise calls that become quite even, you could say, claim dependent on this important source of income of the cruise calls. Akureyri is actually an example. And this, of course, brings along the question of benefit or dependency. Along with increased rate of tourism follows market segmentation that is welcomed by most tourist authorities, which means increased diversity of tourists, supply and demand. And in this respect, communities prefer tourism scenarios that increase local employment, but so far tourism has not yet formed the basis for community development. So in that respect, it still addresses a challenge. In years to come, we foresee, as we've seen so far, growth in tourism impacting communities in a very asymmetrical way. Some regions will experience no additional tourist activity, while others will almost be experiencing huge influx of large-scale tourism, and with that follows increased risk of social and environmental stress of natural habitats, wildlife, and communities. And now I'm going to go through the last two slides because we've had so many frictions in this talk. I'm just going to make this a little bit short and present it to the sort of the punchline of this presentation. Addressing environmental challenges, which I think is a very important issue for now and for years to come. because what we are already seeing is that increased activities may result in uncontrolled environmental impact if local authorities are unable to define and monitor what acceptable levels of emission of substances, spilled water dumpings, etc. are. And in narrow Arctic waterways, ships must travel close to land and may well encounter local hunters or travelers out in boats. In addition, proximity to communities means proximity to hunting areas and the animals that people depend upon. So the potential for environmental impact is correspondingly higher in these areas. Tourism, too, is likely to take place largely or exclusively in the ice-free season, likely to visit communities or areas of high biological activities with bird colonies, key habitats where seals and polar bears make ice dance, etc. It should not be ignored that there are numerous ways passengers of ships can cause environmental harm. Emission substances to the local air and ocean, possible incidents including sinking and groundings, ship operations unsuitable for polar conditions, and the inappropriate behavior of passengers ashore are the most prominent impacts. Though MARPOL restrictions typically prescribe a low distance from shore and the rates at which waste can be released to Arctic the Arctic region lacks infrastructure to adequately dispose of bilgewater, sewage and solid waste, and some Arctic communities do not even have sufficient facilities to deal with the waste of their own communities, let alone that of tourist vessels. We should bear in mind that the average cruise ship passenger generates about 8 gallons of sewage per day, and an average cruise ship can generate a total of between 532,000 and 798,000 liters of sewage and 3.8 million liters of wastewater from sinks, showers and laundries each week, as well as large amount of solid waste. And the average cruise ship will also produce more than 95,000 liters of oily bilgewater from engines and machinery a week. And when ships are forced to stockpile waste on board where reception facilities are lacking, the risk of illegal or accidental release into sensitive areas is heightened. Experience from US and Canada, even though memorandums of understandings have been signed by both parts, have shown that incidences of this are more common than we would like to know. Unfortunately, there is no systematic monitoring of this activity in Arctic waters. And then to proceed here, due to increased changes in the environment, the definition of sustainable levels of human interaction becomes still more important in order to prevent short-term as well as long-term adverse effects of this kind of traffic. And it reminds us that we need to ensure measures that enable a continuous redefinition of these levels with changes in the traffic. And we should also remember that the cruise industry has vested interest in maintaining healthy wildlife, but we're dealing with a huge knowledge gap here in this region. There are contemporarily no common best practices across the Arctic, other than maybe from Alaska in terms of systematic monitoring. So what we're dealing with in terms of the Arctic and cruise traffic, we have a huge knowledge gaps. Actual impacts of climate change on tourist destinations is potentially much further reaching because it affects the resource base of tourism itself, both directly and indirectly. Mass tourism in pristine areas is a contradiction in terms, and the option of defining maximum number of visitors should be enabled. We also need to gain an understanding of the adaptive capacities and practices of the various elements of tourism in relation to climate change, but they are quite limited so far. And so I'm gonna end here saying I think this is an important issue, and I hope I brought, though in fractions, some of the elements of what I've been studying so far. Thank you very much.